I want to talk through the physical and non-physical parts of what makes us beings. Now, I think this is also true for animals. And at the end of the day, human beings are animals, so it's one and the same. Even if we can't necessarily understand, because we can't communicate the same way with animals that we do with other humans, but what's so even funny about that? Even human beings communicate differently with each other. So, but I'm convinced animals do this too, and that there is a physical, non-physical component to all sentient beings. So all sentient beings have a brain and the capacity to think, to feel hurt, whatever, and obviously a central nervous system. This is what makes one sentient. So obviously in astrology, you can see this in terms of the communication side. Mercury, whatever your Mercury sign is, will show the way that you prefer to communicate. The house it's in will show what area of life you probably are most connected to when it comes to communication. Also, again, the combination of those two will show you. And again, if you're dealing with a person who doesn't share those, and again, even if you don't know the animal, that doesn't mean that they don't have their own chart as well. So you might not be able to see things eye to eye. You don't communicate in the same way. And so therefore it becomes tense or difficult. Mars can also show us, because it's to do with conflict, so it can show how you deal or don't deal with conflict. The fifth house is very self-expression based, so again, the sign or signs you have in that area will show you the ways that you prefer to express yourself and how others express themselves, and if that mirrors up. There's so many others, and it gets more complicated the further you go. But this just goes to show how different human beings are. Also, there's certain areas that can show where things are a bit of a struggle, where you might find things challenging in terms of, health decisions or things that are good for you or bad for you. All this type of stuff can definitely show up in the chart in different areas. One of them that comes to mind in terms of health is the sixth house. So in terms of the physical, I want to talk about the whole medical side of things. Now, to extremes, and in the past, there were some pretty messed up practices. Lobotomizing was pretty bad. Shock therapy. All of these were really extreme. Did they actually help anyone? No, they were barbaric, and they didn't improve anything. Now, some of them might have paved the way for some newer practices that do work. I don't dispute that, but part of me thinks most of them were just psychotic. So the extremes of the medical profession can be pretty messed up. But there's also some good. There's some good things that have improved the lives of people, extended their lifespan, and the health, the longevity, I suppose, of the body. But one area where I think medical practice is lacking is nutrition isn't as big of a thing as it should be. And at the end of the day, I think with this society, the way things are, I think we need medical to keep people alive. Does that mean that they're as healthy as they could be? Unfortunately, no. But there is importance for medical, and then there's some parts that are, like I said, can kind of lean towards the extreme. On the flip side, there's a non-physical component as well, and this can be more like spiritual based or health based. This could be again, you could put astrology and human design and all these types of things into that metaphysical, non-physical types of arenas. Now, to some people, this can be extreme as well, and in some ways it is. Some of them can go way too far into the extremes, and some of it is actually quite beneficial, and I think it's worthwhile. Just like the human body, there's a non-physical and physical component. It's important to combine and consider both. If you're solely medical only, that's in critical care and extremes. Does that help you with the modern day challenges? Maybe. Does it fix everything and on the non-physical? No. Same thing goes with non-physical or metaphysical things. Does it help in a lot of the non-physical areas. Yes. Does it always help the physical? Again, it depends on what your thought processes are. It can affect it in both a good or a negative way, depending on what your thoughts are. Now, let me get into that. A decent amount of what ends up happening to the physical is what our thoughts are related around. If your thoughts are quite negative, self-depreciating, disrespectful towards yourself and towards others, you can develop physical illnesses or diseases and things like that. Now, you can either agree with that or disagree. It doesn't matter. It's what happens. So we have to pay attention to what our thoughts gather around, because at the end of the day, we are a non-physical electrical being inside of a body. That's what drives the system. That's what we've created everything from, like what we've recognized and used for our benefit. Electricity, for instance. All these appliances that we can plug into the wall, running electricity through the house. We recognize that and use it like our own likeness of the electrical being inside of our body. Internet, same thing. So you can't dispute that these things exist and that they have validity, because they do. Our emotional state is also important, because our emotions and our feelings have a big part to play and a decent influence on our mental state, which then of course starts to affect the physical. That's why these things are important. You can't spend time, I should say waste time, focusing on all the things that you don't have, the things you don't like, blah, blah, because it creates like a vacuum of negativity. Your energy, your emphasis, and your focus is now on things that you don't want. So you're going to get more of those things. And in some people that might sound weird, but at the basis of manifestation, at the basis of creating what you want, you cannot focus on what you don't want, because it doesn't help, does it? You could sit there, I'll give you some physical examples. You could sit there till you're blue in the face, saying, you know what? I don't want to paint my house blue. I don't want to paint my house blue. I don't want to paint my house blue. I don't want to paint my house blue, right? You can say this over and over and over again. Even though it's true, you don't want to paint your house blue, have you decided what color you're going to paint it? Will anything be done if you're focusing solely on what you don't want? No, of course not. Because you can't do something if your focus is on what you don't want to do. Then you'll end up doing nothing. And then nothing, of course, can happen from that point either. However, if you shift the focus to say, I want to paint my house gray. Now you've made a decision. You've chosen a color. All you have to do now is get the money together, set up the time, and get the paint, and then paint it. See the difference? It sets up a clear choice of what you're going to spend your time thinking about, what you're going to spend your time doing. That's why these things are important. So you can't sit there and focus on all the things that you don't want, the things that you don't like, and that's what I've noticed happens with a lot of people. Like, this is where a lot of the negative judgments and stuff like this can come from, because people are so busy focusing, oh my God, I don't like what they're wearing. Oh my God, they look so silly. Oh my God, what are they doing? What are they going to think? Well, none of that will help you with your health, your state of mind, your spiritual practices, your advance. There's no area that's going to help, because you're focusing on something or someone outside of what you want and what you want to pursue. It has nothing to do with your goals. There's nothing positive about it. There's nothing functional about it. There's nothing helpful about it. It goes nowhere, and it helps you with nothing. And like I said, if you spend your life doing that, it will eventually make your body sick. It will make you unhappy. And your focus is outside of yourself. Now, there's nothing you can do about other people. There's nothing you can do or change about what they're doing. All you have the ability to do and to change is from within you. Your focus, your purpose, what you're doing, right? So that's really important. Now, my recommendation is that you consider these things and let it just sort of open your mind a little bit, because I think everybody's kind of different this way and people have different perspectives. Anyway, I hope that was helpful.